Nanga Parbat, the ninth highest mountain in the world at 8,126 meters, 26,660 feet, rises like a colossal sentinel in the western Himalayas of what is now northern Pakistan. To Americans familiar with the sheer scale of Denali or the technical challenges of Yosemite's big walls, imagine something far more unforgiving. A peak with the largest vertical relief on Earth, sweeping more than 7,000 meters from the Indus River Valley to its summit in a single dramatic thrust. Its nickname, Killer Mountain, was hard-earned. Before 1953, at least 31 people had died attempting it, climbers and porters alike, victims of avalanches, storms, altitude sickness, and exhaustion. The mountain had defeated multiple expeditions, many of them German-led in the 1930s, backed with significant national ambition. Tragedies like the 1934 storm that claimed Willy Merkel and others, or the 1937 avalanche that buried an entire team, cemented its fearsome reputation. For post-World War II Europe, especially in Austria and Germany, conquering Nanga Parbat became a symbol of resilience and human limits, much like how Americans viewed the conquest of Everest or the space race in the same era. Enter Hermann Buhl, born on September 21, 1924, in Innsbruck, Austria. The youngest of 4 children, Buhl's early life was marked by hardship. After his mother was institutionalized, he and a sibling spent time in an orphanage before being raised by relatives. Young Hermann found solace and purpose in the mountains. By his teens, he was tearing up the limestone walls of the Austrian Alps, Karwendel, Wetterstein, and Wilderkaiser ranges. He joined the Alpine Club and developed a reputation for bold, solo climbs and incredible stamina. Buhl wasn't a team player in the traditional sense. He was a loner with an almost superhuman ability to push through pain and deprivation. In 1952, he made a stunning solo ascent of the northeast face of Piz Battle. He trained relentlessly, often forgetting to eat or drink in his single-minded focus on the summit. This drive, combined with his experience in technical alpine climbing without heavy support, made him an ideal, if controversial, member of the 1953 Willy Merkel Memorial Expedition organized by Dr. Karl Herrlighofer. For an American audience raised on stories of frontier individualism, Buhl embodied that spirit in an extreme environment. He wasn't climbing for glory or oxygen tanks. He climbed because the mountain called, and he refused to be denied. The 1953 German-Austrian expedition arrived in the region in May, setting up base camp at the foot of the Rakiat Glacier on the mountain's northeast side. The route followed the Rakiat Face and East Ridge, a complex path involving glaciers, icefalls, steep ridges, and exposed traverses. Logistics were daunting. Heavy loads carried by local porters, often called Hunzas in expedition accounts, variable weather, and the ever-present threat of altitude illness. Early progress was slow and plagued by setbacks. Monsoon conditions brought heavy snow and poor visibility. Team dynamics were tense. Herrlighofer, the expedition leader, clashed with the climbers over strategy. By late June, after weeks of effort establishing camps up the glacier and ridge, morale was low. On June 30th, Herrlighofer ordered a retreat from advanced positions, believing further attempts too risky. For determined climbers, Hermann Buhl, Walter Frauenberger, Hans Erdl, and Otto Kempter had other ideas. They mutinied, in the spirit of true alpinists, continuing upward against orders as the weather showed signs of clearing. On July 1st to 2nd, they pushed to Camp V at around 6,900 meters, 22,600 feet. Frauenberger and Erdl descended to support from below, leaving Buhl and Kempter to spend the night in a small tent at that extreme altitude. This defiance mirrored American tales of explorers like Lewis and Clark or Shackleton's endurance crew, ordinary men making extraordinary decisions when bureaucracy or caution threatened the goal. The team had limited supplemental oxygen, and Buhl, true to his style, planned to climb without it. At these heights, every step requires superhuman effort. The air contains roughly one-third the oxygen at sea level. Hypoxia clouds judgment, saps strength, and can kill. Around 2:30 a.m. on July 3rd, Buhl rose in the bitter cold. He prepared a simple breakfast and readied himself. Otto Kempter was slow to stir and not feeling strong. Accounts differ slightly. Buhl said he waited briefly, while Kempter felt Buhl slipped away, but the result was the same. Buhl set off alone into the darkness, carrying minimal gear, some chocolate, dried fruit, and his ice axe. He left most of the food for Kempter, expecting him to follow. Kempter did start later, but turned back at the Silver Saddle, around 7,400 meters due to exhaustion. Buhl was now utterly alone on one of the world's most dangerous mountains. The route ahead was grueling. A long, undulating ridge, then a vast plateau of drifted snow leading toward the summit pyramid. Buhl moved with relentless efficiency, but the scale was deceptive. What looked manageable took hours. By midday, under scorching high-altitude sun, he ditched his rucksack to lighten the load and pressed on across the plateau toward the Antessima for summit at about 7,910 meters. For American readers, picture this as a man running an ultramarathon at the altitude of a commercial jet's cruising height, with no support crew, no rescue possible, and the constant risk of a slip that would mean certain death. Buhl used stimulants like Pervitin, a methamphetamine-based drug common in that era, also used by soldiers, and coca-tea to combat fatigue and apathy, but nothing could fully prepare him for the thin air and physical toll. Buhl continued climbing through the afternoon. The terrain grew steeper and more technical, rocky shoulders, icy slopes, and exhausting traverses. He crawled on all fours in places, his body screaming for oxygen. Around 7 p.m. on July 3rd, after roughly 17 hours of continuous effort from Camp V, the 29-year-old Austrian stood alone on the summit of Nanga Parbat. He planted his ice axe with a small Pakistani flag attached. He had forgotten the German or Austrian one, and took photographs, only one of which survived. There was no elation of conquest, just profound relief mixed with exhaustion. "I didn't feel like a conquistador," he later wrote. "I was just happy to be done with the ordeal." The time was dangerously late. Sunset was approaching, and the descent loomed. Buhl had achieved what no one else had: the first descent of an 8,000-meter peak solo and without bottled oxygen. It remains a singular feat in mountaineering history. But the nightmare was only half over. As he began descending, disaster compounded. He lost a crampon, making icy sections treacherous. Darkness fell completely. Without a headlamp or bivouac gear, he was forced to stop on a narrow ledge at around 8,000 meters. He stood upright through the night, clutching a small handhold with one hand to avoid falling, dozing in brief, perilous moments of apathy. Hallucinations haunted him. The cold bit into his feet. Buhl reached Camp V late on July 4th, after a total of about 41 hours away from it, 40-plus hours of near-constant movement and suffering. His companions had nearly given him up for dead. He was emaciated, severely dehydrated, frostbitten on his toes, and barely able to walk. He had to be helped down to base camp. The expedition's success was bittersweet. Buhl's feat captured the world's imagination, proving what raw human will could achieve in the death zone. He went on to climb Broad Peak, 8,051 meters, in 1957 with a small team, again without oxygen, in alpine style, light and fast. Tragically, he died later that year at age 32 on Kagalisa when a cornice collapsed beneath him. For Americans, Buhl's story resonates as a testament to individualism, resilience, and the pioneering spirit. In an era of massive, siege-style expeditions with armies of Sherpas and oxygen, he showed the power of going light and alone. His ascent influenced modern alpine climbing, emphasizing speed, skill, and self-reliance over brute logistical force. Nanga Parbat remains one of the hardest 8,000 airs, with a high death toll even today. Buhl's 41-hour solo nightmare stands as a benchmark of what the human body and mind can endure, and a reminder of the mountain's unforgiving power. In the words of those who study such feats, it wasn't just a climb. It was a profound test of the soul against the void.